Live from Washington, this is BBC News. The acting head of the US Secret Service says swift action from agents helped foil Sunday's attempt to assassinate Donald Trump. The UN's most senior official overseeing aid efforts in Gaza says the catastrophic humanitarian situation can only be fixed with a ceasefire deal. And a court battle to determine the future of Rupert Murdoch's media empire and a nearly $20 billion family trust is now underway. Hello, I'm Lucy Hockings. The acting director of the US Secret Service has spoken to Donald Trump following the second assassination attempt on the former president. Ronald Rowe has said that Mr. Trump is now aware that he's being provided with the highest level of security. The FBI is saying the suspect, Ryan Routh, arrived in the area near Mr. Trump's Florida golf club at 2 in the morning. He remained undetected for nearly 12 hours when Secret Service agents then spotted him hiding in bushes with a rifle. He never fired his weapon and fled on foot after a Secret Service agent fired several shots in his direction. The 58-year-old suspect appearing in court on Monday, charged with firearms offences. The FBI is interviewing his friends and relatives, as well as investigating his online presence. Later on Monday, the White House said that Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden had a cordial conversation. With Sunday's attack being the second attempt on Donald Trump's life in a little over 2 months, questions over the safety of presidential candidates have intensified. Our analysis editor, Ros Atkins, looks at the level of security surrounding Mr. Trump when he was on the golf course.
The Trump International Golf Club spreads across 330 acres, and Donald Trump plays there regularly. Located in West Palm Beach in Florida, the course is a 10-minute drive from his home at Mar-a-Lago. The club's perimeter is more than 3 miles long. This is one part of it, right by a public road. There's a chain-link fence. Beyond that, you can easily see the course. And this was the route Donald Trump was taking during his round. He'd reached hole 5. According to police, as the former president played, Secret Service agents walked 1 hole ahead, as is standard. And we're told those agents spotted a rifle sticking out of the fence. BBC verifiers concluded it was somewhere in this area, which was later cordoned off. Police say Donald Trump was between 300 and 500 yards away, within range of the rifle. They also released this image, showing a rifle fitted with a scope, 2 backpacks, and a GoPro camera attached to the fence. These events in Florida happened while Mr. Trump's safety during this election campaign was already under greater scrutiny because of a major security failure in July.
Take a look at what happened.
At a rally in Pennsylvania, a gunman shot at Trump, hitting his ear and killing a bystander. The head of the Secret Service resigned days later. The Secret Service said they had increased the amount of assets protecting Donald Trump. But Mr. Trump isn't president, and that's a factor. The local sheriff says if he was, we would have had this entire golf course surrounded. But because he's not, the security is limited to the areas that the Secret Service deems possible. This raises questions about what is possible, and if the candidates in this presidential election can be kept safe, especially in locations they're known to visit frequently. And while Americans seek answers, the authorities say the threat level remains high.
Well, let's get more now on some of those questions around security from Chris Swecker, who was Assistant Director of the FBI from 2004 to 2006. Good to have you with us. We've now learned that Ryan Routh was there for 12 hours. This presents such a challenge. How you lock down something like a golf course with public roads around it, but also the amount of security that Donald Trump is now going to need. What do you think the greatest challenge is here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's the most challenging of environments on a golf course, because all you have to do is just walk the perimeter, walk the fence line at least 1 hole ahead of the president, make sure nobody's camped out and established a little sniper nest. So I think his rallies are a much greater challenge because of the number of people present. That you know, every person there is a potential threat. So, you know, I'm a little bit harder in terms of judgment on the Secret Service in this instance. I think it would have been a very simple matter, and I think they agree too. Every Secret Service person I've spoken to agrees. They
So,
should have
Chris,
been walking that fence
what do you
line.
think needs to happen now in order to better protect the former president?
Yeah, I mean, I said a long time ago, every time he's up on a podium, he ought to have bulletproof glass on all sides of him. I know he likes to connect with the audience, but I think that's the only way to really protect him when he's out in public in the big rallies. You know, as far as this type of event or any other type, or this type of setting or any other, setting where Trump is out and about, I think they just have to be more proactive, more anticipatory, more in the deterrent mode and predicting what a bad guy could possibly do. All they'd have to do is sort of play it out in their planning. Look, where is the threat going to come from? In Butler, it was from the rooftops. In this case, it would have come from the fence line, the tree line. So, I think they like to think that they're close in protecting the president instead of looking, and establishing themselves in areas where the threat may emanate from. Get in plain clothes and walk along the tree line or outside the fence. You don't have to wear the dark suit and the sunglasses all the time. You can roll up your sleeves and do some real work.
And Chris, in terms of the FBI investigation now into Ryan Routh, so much is already known. So what's their priority at the moment?
Yeah, I think priority one is to find out how he came to be at that place at that time. Did he get inside information, or did someone carelessly pass him the information or post the information? Was he conducting surveillance? There's some lessons to be learned if that's the case. If it's the inside information scenario, I think that that implicates a third party, and that's something that's pretty scary. So that's question one. I mean, we'd like to know the motivation, but I think we know the motivation based on his posts, social media posts. He's obviously anti-Trump. He's obviously an action guy. He goes all the way to Ukraine because he believes that they need help and they need extra fighters in Ukraine. So he travels there, even though he doesn't have much money. He's what they call a true believer. And whatever he's believing in at the moment, he's all in. And in this case, I think he was in that mode of anti-Trump.
The country right now is facing so many threats from all sorts of different corners, not just domestic tourism, cybercrime, espionage as well, intellectual property theft, possible foreign interference in elections. How stretched is the FBI?
Well, the FBI, I think, has enough resources to get the job done in terms of their major priorities, which you just ticked off: counterintelligence, counterterrorism, major crime, major white-collar crime, gangs, those types of things, intellectual property theft, the threats that are presented by our greatest adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, our greatest adversaries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. But I think that it's a matter of prioritizing those resources and putting them where you have your highest priorities. I think that's the problem of the Secret Service. They like to do investigations of minor frauds, bank frauds, credit card frauds, and that sort of thing. Not that that shouldn't be worked, but they got over half their resources devoted to that type of mission, when their real mission, their core mission, is protection. So leadership at the top level, and that's what I had to do at the FBI, is you pivot and you put your resources where your highest priorities are, in this case, protection, and pass those bank frauds off to local police detectives.
So is there a case here, Chris, that these agencies should be working more closely together?
Always. That was our issue before 9/11. We thought we had fixed that issue. And I see it developing again, where there's this cultural difference between the federal agents and the local police officers. You could see it at the press conference, how they dress, their demeanor, how they act, the officious nature of how they present themselves, versus rolling up your sleeves, putting on some blue jeans and a T-shirt and working with local police detectives in environments that don't lend themselves to dark suits and sunglasses.
Chris, really great to get your thoughts. Thank you for joining us, Chris Wecker there.
Thank you.
A reminder, of course, you can find out, all the latest on the apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump. We've got a live page up and running on the BBC News website. Well worth logging on to take a look. You can also find the latest on our news app too. The UN's most senior official overseeing aid and reconstruction in Gaza says the world is collectively failing innocent civilians there after nearly a year of war. Speaking to the BBC from New York, Sigrid Kaag, the senior UN coordinator for humanitarian action and reconstruction in Gaza, described the territory as the most unsafe place in the world to work. On Monday, she presented a report to the Security Council where she described humanitarian conditions in Gaza as sombre and dark, and she pleaded for a ceasefire and release of hostages, saying a political solution to the conflict was the only path forward. Ms Kaag has been speaking to our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, in a rare interview.
My main message is of a very sombre and perhaps dark nature, that humanitarian conditions in Gaza, as well documented and reported, are akin to a significant catastrophe, that we've built all systems to be in place, but there's no substitute for political will and the political choice to improve matters. The ceasefire and release of the hostages is desperately needed. Not much else can be improved until we reach that point.
Is the UN failing the people of Gaza?
It's too easy to say we're failing. What we are doing collectively, I would say, as an international community, is we are failing the innocent civilians in Gaza. And that comes out of the political environment. The UN is working around the clock. We've lost a large number of our own staff. The so-called enabling environment in Gaza is actually counter to anything else we've witnessed in other places.
Well, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller says the US continues to work with mediators Egypt and Qatar to present a revised proposal for a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. Mr Miller telling reporters he doesn't have a timetable for the plan, but said Washington wants to make sure it is one that can get Israel and Hamas to an ultimate agreement. Calls for a ceasefire deal came as the US State Department announced that Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to Egypt on Tuesday, where he'll meet with officials to discuss efforts to reach a ceasefire and the release of hostages. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid has joined world leaders in calling for Prime Minister Netanyahu to seal a Gaza truce deal immediately during his visit to meet top officials in Washington. At least 16 people have died after catastrophic flooding caused by a powerful storm across several countries in Central Europe. The damage from Germany all the way across to Romania has left thousands homeless, and for some areas, more bad weather is on the way. The mayor of the Polish city of Nysa has asked all 44,000 residents to evacuate. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Let's look at some other stories making the news. Former BBC presenter Hugh Edwards has been given a 6-month prison sentence, suspended for 2 years after admitting having indecent images of children as young as 7. The 63-year-old will also have to complete a sex offenders program. Edwards' barrister said his client was profoundly sorry. The mother of one of the babies murdered by Lucy Letby has told the public inquiry into what happened that she was lied to by the medical director of the Countess of Chester Hospital. The infant's mother saying she had been told there was nothing untoward about her baby's death. Letby, who was a nurse on a neonatal ward, was convicted in June 2023 of injecting air into the child's stomach. And the British Medical Association has announced that junior doctors in England have accepted the government's latest pay offer, ending their long-running dispute. Junior doctors took part in 11 separate strikes over 18 months, severely disrupting the health service. Today's deal involves an average pay rise of 22% over 2 years. You're live with BBC News. A court battle to determine the future of Rupert Murdoch's media empire and an almost $20 billion family trust began in the US on Monday. The case will pit 93-year-old Mr Murdoch against 3 of his eldest children over who will gain the most voting shares to control News Corp and Fox News when the billionaire dies. Well, for more on the trial, let's bring in Paddy Manning as a journalist and author of the book The Successor, The High-Stakes Life of Lachlan Murdoch, one of Rupert's sons. Paddy, I need some explanation to start off with. How exactly does the trust work, the family trust, at the moment?
The trust has 8 votes. It has a controlling stake in Fox and News Corporation. Rupert has 4 votes, and each of his 4 elder children have 1 vote each. when Rupert dies, his 4 votes effectively expire, and you have a 4-way tussle for control. That's the scenario that is worrying Rupert Murdoch.
And who does this pit Lachlan against?
Well, Rupert is arguing that Lachlan should have an expanded voting power, as he does now, so that he can control the trust regardless of the views of his 3 siblings. That's Prudence from Rupert's first marriage, and Elizabeth and James from Rupert's second marriage to Anna Torv Murdoch. And the scenario that they're worried about is that the more politically moderate siblings will try to wrest control of the Murdoch media empire once Rupert dies from Lachlan, and do what I actually reported originally in my book, which was they would reassert control of the Murdoch media assets and do it in a way that would protect and enhance democracies around the world rather than undermine them.
Paddy, without being too succession about all of this, what about the dynamics within the family? What do we know about what's going on?
They are more deeply divided than ever. We have not seen the scenes we've seen overnight in Reno than ever. We have not seen the scenes we've seen overnight in Reno with all of the Murdoch children turning up to the courtroom steps. For these closed proceedings, we've never seen that before. And in particular, the move by Rupert and to expand Lachlan's voting power has kind of caused a schism. And the siblings have now, whose position was kind of not clear. It was well known that there was a rivalry and even an animosity between Lachlan and his younger brother James, who had competed for the succession. But it wasn't clear what side, if any, the sisters would take. But it seems as though the move to expand Lachlan's voting power has kind of forced them into an alignment with their younger brother James.
Cases like this, Paddy, cases like this often end in some kind of settlement, though. What would that look like potentially?
Well, it could be a repeat of what we saw in 2018 when there were documents drawn up, according to the New York Times reporting, to buy out those siblings from the trust. And Lachlan, at that time, as I understand and wrote in my biography, balked at paying effectively for control when he was already the anointed successor and felt that he had control. So he didn't want to go into debt to buy them out. There are various estimates about the value of the trust, but it seems like the figure that is being bandied about is $15 billion. So if that's roughly the case, Lachlan has to find $7 billion, and he doesn't want to do that. So where we are is an attempt to effectively give Lachlan control without him having to buy his siblings out of the trust. And that's how I understand the dynamic now. The problem is whether this can be said to be in the interests of all the beneficiaries, and that's the test that the probate commissioner in Nevada has set down for Rupert to be able to amend this trust that was meant to be irrevocable.
And the big picture here, Paddy, if I can ask you about that, we know that Rupert Murdoch has always had these dynastic aspirations for his family, but just how big is the empire?
The empire spans Fox and News Corporation, which Fox Corporation owns Fox News, of course, Fox Sports, the Fox television stations in America. News Corporation owns the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the Times of London, the Sun, and a bunch of Australian newspapers, as well as a pay TV monopoly here, and a very big holding in a company called REA, which is a digital real estate giant. So overall, we've got one of the most powerful media companies in the world, albeit one that is, being challenged by, the rise of the internet and streaming, and so, it's legacy media assets whose probably best days are behind them. Also
interesting and great to have your thoughts. Paddy, thank you for joining us from Sydney.
Thanks so much.
Let's take you to Iran now, where the new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, says he'll use his power to ensure the morality police do not bother women in the country. Now, the reformist president was responding to a female reporter who told him she had to take various alleyways to avoid the morality police to get to a press conference. Mr Pezeshkian, who replaced the ultra-conservative Ibrahim Raisi after his death in a helicopter crash in May, campaigned on fully opposing police patrols enforcing the mandatory headscarf. He was speaking to journalists on the second anniversary of the death of Mahsa Amini, who died in police custody after being arrested for failing to wear her hijab properly. Her death sparked the Women, Life, Freedom protests, which led to hundreds of arrests and a large number of deaths. But women in Iran have told the BBC their safety is still at risk, saying their online activity has been spied on by the authorities, leading to arrests, to threats and beatings. BBC Verify reporter Reha Kansara reports, but we have a warning for you. This report does contain distressing accounts of violence.
They took me to a room to receive my punishment. He was holding a black leather whip in one hand. That's when he started hitting me all over my body. It was very painful, but I didn't want to show weakness.
This terrifying testimony comes from inside Iran. For her safety, Alif has spoken to us anonymously. She's one of 5 Iranians who've told us they were arrested by the state for their social media activity. The BBC and other independent media are not allowed to report freely from the country, and they've taken great risks speaking with us.
In one interrogation, they forced me to give them my phone. They accessed all my photos and saw that I took part in the protests. They were recording me. He said, "So you don't regret your actions?" And I said, "No." Then he threatened me and said, "Since you're so stubborn, I'll try and get you the maximum sentence."
Shortly after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, women were legally required to cover their hair. But the death of Mahsa Amini whilst in police custody in 2022 unleashed an unprecedented stream of civil disobedience on social media and on the streets. Zan Zindagi Azadi, meaning women, life, freedom, became the rallying cry for women's rights in Iran. Now the movement's being met with an even harsher clampdown on dissent using state surveillance. Experts say Iran is learning from surveillance states like China and intensifying its methods to catch women who refuse to wear the hijab.
They have developed some mobile phone application and other tools for the police or those volunteers who are already vetted by the government.
The Iranian app Nazar allows people to report women for not wearing the hijab. It's been launched on the police website and is also available on private groups in government-owned messaging apps. But activating it requires authorization.
So they can have this application on their mobile phone. So whenever they see a vehicle is passing and the passenger or the driver is a woman who are not wearing proper hijab, I mean, whatever definition that they have from proper hijab, they can report on it. Basically, they can put the license plate number, they can put the time, location.
It's been widely reported that tens of thousands of people have been arrested since the protests in 2022.
If you look at the charges, propaganda against the state. What propaganda against the state? I'm saying that, you did this to me. I mean, this is propaganda against the state? No, it is the truth, but the truth makes you look bad.
We put these allegations to the Iranian government, but they did not respond. Though mass demonstrations have come to a halt, people are protesting in more subtle ways. And this movement, that's led by women and driven by a right to life and freedom, shows no signs of stopping. Reha Kansara, BBC News.
Let's update you on some other stories from around the world. Firefighters have been battling a pipeline fire in Texas. Video footage showing the blaze with a pillar of fire you can see there shooting tens of feet into the sky, igniting a park and power poles nearby. People around the area have been told to evacuate. The cause of the fire remains unclear and no injuries have been reported so far. US social media platform Meta has announced it's banning Russian media outlet RT and other state-run media outlets. The Biden administration has accused the outlet of acting as an arm of Moscow's spy agencies carrying out covert information warfare operations. The administration is currently imposing sanctions on the state-funded broadcaster that oversees RT. UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his Italian counterpart Giorgia Meloni agreed to intensify efforts to combat human trafficking. They're meeting in Rome here, with Mr Starmer praising Ms Meloni for what he called remarkable progress by Italy for its work on tackling illegal migration. The Prime Minister also announcing hundreds of millions of dollars in Italian investment in the UK, saying he was opening a new era for UK-Italy relations. And a public inquiry has begun here in the US looking into the Titan submersible disaster last year, in which 5 people lost their lives. The vessel, owned by the US company OceanGate, imploded on a visit to the wreck of the Titanic, prompting international search and rescue efforts. As many as 10 OceanGate employees are expected to testify over the next 2 weeks before the Coast Guard's Marine Board of Investigations. Plenty more on the BBC News website. You can get the very latest on the FBI investigation into the second attempted assassination of the former President Donald Trump. That live page is up and running all the time, so do log on and take a look, and also stay with us here on BBC News.
Hello. On Monday, we had an area of high pressure establish itself across the UK, and with that came plenty of sunshine. For example, here in Capel Currig and just to the south in Ceredigion, we had the day's highest temperature, up to 22 degrees in the warmest spots. Now, you'll notice a bit more in the way of cloud towards the northwest, and indeed, over the next few hours, could see some splashes of rain work into Shetland for a time. Quite breezy conditions here. Watch out for a few mist and fog patches over the next few hours, forming across parts of northwest England, Wales, the West Midlands and southwest England too. Visibility could drop down to about 100 metres in the densest of those fog patches. So it's quite a chilly start to the day, with temperatures down at around 5 degrees in the coldest spots. The high pressure, though, is here to stay for the next few days. Now, starting off on Tuesday, a bit of rain clearing away from Shetland. Might see a few patches of cloud across East Anglia first thing, but it should brighten up with some sunshine here. And any mist and fog patches clearing to reveal another beautiful day. Plenty of autumn sunshine, and those temperatures very similar to those on Monday. High teens to low 20s. One of the warmest spots could end up being northern Scotland, with highs here of 22, western counties of Northern Ireland 21. Middle part of the week, perhaps a bit more in the way of cloud just to start off across parts of England, East Wales. That will thin and break with time. And there will be more of a breeze blowing for East Anglia in the southeast of England. Quite breezy for the far north of Scotland too. But otherwise, it's another beautiful day. After a chilly morning, there'll be loads more sunshine. Temperatures, 23 there for northern Scotland, 24 in southeast England. These temperatures are quite a bit above average for this time of the year. It's a case of spot the difference really for Thursday. Again, a few mist and fog patches, a few patches of cloud initially, but loads and loads of sunshine to come as we go on through the afternoon. Top temperatures 24 again around London, 22 for western Scotland, and we're still around 20 degrees or so for western counties of Northern Ireland. It will feel warm in that September sunshine. We do, however, start to see some signs of a change in the pattern through Friday and into the weekend as low pressure starts to threaten from the south. This looks quite likely to bring us some heavy thundery showers or some longer spells of rain across England and Wales. But at this stage, it looks like Scotland and Northern Ireland, probably Northern England, should stay fine well into the weekend.
Be ready. Change can happen in an instant. Check on the BBC Weather app.
The art of good conversation is to say the right thing at the right time and in the right way. You have to be original, sympathetic, encouraging, and also keep an open mind. And you really do just need to sit back and listen.
Catty Kay meets with legendary Olympic champions to find out what it takes to reach the top.
Influential with me, Catty Kay. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
Discovering the world's table, we travel the globe, unearthing the history behind our most celebrated dishes. This is like a work of art. Meeting the people preserving local ingredients and those adapting traditions for modern tastes.
They call people from here potatoes.
Potato people?
Yeah.
Each recipe tells its own unique story, bringing a fresh perspective on our changing world. Join me, Nick Quick, for Discovering the World's Table. Watch on iPlayer.
Amazon scraps its working from home policy, ordering its staff back to the office 5 days a week. And as Typhoon Babinka lashes Shanghai, we take a look at the impact on travel in the financial hub. Hello, I'm Steve Lyon. Welcome to Business Today. Now let's begin with some news out of the United States. Amazon is demanding that its employees return to the office 5 days a week in a significant shift from its pandemic-era hybrid policy. The BBC's New York business correspondent, Ritika Gupta, has the latest.
In a memo sent to employees on Monday, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy called for a full return to office at the start of 2025. For the last 15 months, Amazon employees have been expected to work in the office 3 days per week. Now Jassy expects 5 days of in-person work from employees in an effort to re-establish pre-pandemic norms of office culture. If Amazon employees don't follow the current policy, it could hurt their chances of being promoted. And exceptions for working from home will be subject to an additional layer of leadership approval. Jassy has previously advocated that employees work in the office, writing that a physical presence improves company culture. It also comes as Amazon has invested into its office spaces in recent years. And Jassy is joined by other big tech executives like Tesla's Elon Musk and Salesforce's Mark Benioff, who have also called for similar return-to-office mandates. However, it's a push that's proven unpopular amongst some tech workers. Last year, a number of corporate employees staged a walkout at its Seattle headquarters, citing multiple grievances, including the push to get workers back in the office.
Facebook owner Meta has banned several Russian state media networks from its